My name is Bat. Once this name was pronounced with respect, even with a certain caution. Now it sounds dull, like an old key that no one has put in the keyhole for a long time. I live on the outskirts of the town, in a house that once seemed like a fortress. Every brick was paid for with my sweat. Every room knew my voice, my steps, my decisions. Now all you can hear here is the creak of the old floors and my breathing. My children. They have grown up, become successful, respected people. For society, an example. For me, a cold wall. They rarely visit, and when they do, there is no warmth in their eyes. There is only haste, a phone in their hand, conversations about matters that are always more important than me. They do not listen. They nod politely, but inside there is indifference. My grandchildren. Oh, their eyes are even harder. For them, I am a burden, an unnecessary guest. They get annoyed when I try to talk, when I share memories or ask for help. They wave me away wearily, as if I were an annoying mosquito that was ruining their mood. They don't see me in the store. The saleswoman glances over my head to move on to the younger customers. I stand there like a shadow, my old hands shaking as I count out small coins. They don't listen to me in the hospital. The doctor, young and self-confident, speaks as if my pain is fiction and my words are noise. He raises his eyebrows when I take a long time to answer, as if I'm taking up his time. Every day I feel more and more like I'm becoming redundant. Isolation isn't silence. It's the sound of being unable to hear you. I sit by the window for hours, watching my neighbors walk by, carrying packages, laughing into their phones, hurrying somewhere. They don't greet me. My gaze is transparent to them, but something inside me is rotting. Not my body, but my soul. I feel the resentments building up like slow rust eating away at iron. Once I was a pillar, now I am a shadow. And this shadow is getting darker every day. Sometimes I hear voices from the past in my head, loud, full of power, and next to them is the silence of the present. I can still count. I still remember. And I see what others don't notice. Indifference is the sharpest knife. It cuts deeper than any resentment. I have a diary left. So far, it only contains notes about the days when I felt particularly unnoticed. I haven't written names yet, but it's a matter of time. Because all this is not just aging, it's something more. It's a fall that begins to awaken something else in me. I don't know exactly when the turning point will come, but I feel it's close. And when it comes, I will no longer be a victim. Sometimes I look at my hands. They are wrinkled, trembling, the skin darkened by age and work. But if I close my eyes, I see them differently. Strong, sinewy hands that could lift any burden, sign a contract, shake hands, and seal the fate of an entire enterprise. Once my handshake weighed more than a seal. People knew, if Bat said it, so it will be. I was a businessman. I was the master not only in my own house, but also in the world where money, interests, destinies revolve. I started from scratch. In my pocket, nothing. In my heart, one stubborn conviction. I will not live the way my parents lived, in poverty, with my hands forever stuck in the ground. I worked day and night, did not sleep, negotiated, took risks. I lost and rose, fell and moved forward again. I lost friends, saw betrayals, but I always stood. I was a symbol of stubbornness, of firmness. People followed me. I created a business that fed dozens of families. I paid salaries. I negotiated with suppliers. I saved those who believed in me from bankruptcy. My name was a guarantee. I remember holding my children in my arms, still small, defenseless. I looked them in the eye and promised they would never know hunger, cold, shame. I gave them everything I had. During the day, I fought for money, for deals, for reputation. At night, I sat by their cribs, told them stories, stroked their heads. I was a father who knew that his mission was to give his family strength. And I did. I raised them in abundance, in confidence, in comfort. I thought they would appreciate it. I believed they would remember who was their support. In business, I was feared and respected. They feared me because I did not forgive lies, betrayal, and sloppy work. They respected me because I never threw words to the wind. Even my enemies admitted, "Bat is a rock. I could lean on him." I was the one who did not fall. They knew me in the city. They greeted me. They invited me to meetings, councils, and conferences. I would enter the hall, and the conversations would subside. Not because of fear, but because of respect. Because I proved that the impossible is possible if you don't give up. But along with success, there were also wounds. My wife, she left earlier than she should have. My heart could not stand it. That was the first time I realized that power and money are worthless when there is an empty bed next to me. I lost not only my beloved, I lost my rear, but I persevered. I had children, I had a business, and I told myself, "You have no right to fall." I continued to build, control, and care. And it seemed to me that this was right. What they saw, I sacrificed myself for them. I thought they appreciated it. I thought they remembered. I was a man of honor. If I gave my word, I kept it. If I signed a deal, I held my head up. I could be tough, but I was never mean. I held my people. I cared for them. I defended their interests even when it threatened me. I was the one who didn't hide. I always went ahead. Sometimes, sitting by the window today, I remember the day we opened the first office. An old house, windows without curtains, plywood tables, but an atmosphere of victory. I saw the fire in the eyes of my people, and I knew we will do what others considered madness. And we did. I led them forward, and they believed in me. Then I thought that this belief would remain forever. And now even my children don't believe. They look at me as an old man who has lost his meaning. For them, my past is just stories that they are tired of listening to. They don't see in me who I was. Their eyes are cold. They say, "Grandpa, rest. You have already lived your life." Lived. This word cuts me more sharply than any betrayal in business. Because enemies could betray me, but relatives? They have no right to forget who I am. At night when I can't sleep, I remember the battles I won, the agreements that seemed impossible, the losses I endured. Sometimes it seems to me that I am the only witness to my own past. The world has erased my traces. People have destroyed the memory of me. But I remember. I will always remember. Because in this memory I am still alive. There I am still strong. There I am still the bat who cannot be ignored. And it is this memory that is my greatest poison. Because the deeper I delve into it, the more acutely I feel how empty my present has become. This memory, is like a mirror. It shows me greatness so that I can see my fall even more painfully. And from this, something tightens in my chest, and a voice inside whispers, "You gave everything. And what did you get in return?" I am learning to count the days not by the calendar, but by the pain. Every day brings a new prick, a new wound. They are small at first glance, but in my heart they are small deaths, and I do not forget any of them. I have learned to write everything down in the notebook that lies on my desk. It is old, squared, with yellowed pages. There is no title on the cover, only a scratch that looks like a scar. There, I write names, dates, details. So far, no one knows about this notebook. But it is growing, as my bitterness is growing. I remember how a few months ago I asked my son to help with the roof. "It is leaking," I said. "It is difficult for me alone." He listened to me on the phone, and I heard irritation in his voice. Dad, I have work. Meetings. I can't. Call the master. I nodded silently, although he could not see me. I did call the master, but the amount was such that I had to deny myself medication for several weeks. I didn't tell anyone about it. I simply wrote down, Son, Roof, Refusal, April 14th. A week later, I wanted to talk to my grandson. He's 17. I saw myself as young in him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes full of fire. I wanted to tell him how I worked 3 jobs at his age, how I struggled, how I didn't give up. He listened for a few minutes, then rolled his eyes and said, Grandfather, you're constantly clinging to the past. Who cares? You don't understand anything these days. The words fell on me like stones. I saw in his gaze not just indifference, but contempt. I gritted my teeth, nodded, and fell silent. In the evening I wrote down, Grandson, Contempt, April 22nd. Another day in the hospital. I felt a pain in my heart and decided to leave. I sit in line, people walk past me as if I'm transparent. Finally, I get to the office. The doctor is young, self-confident. He doesn't look at me, only at the monitor. I try to explain. At night, my chest feels tight. It's hard to breathe. He nods, types something, and finally says, Your age. What do you want? It happens. Take your pills. Next. His words sounded like a sentence. You're no longer a person. You are age. I barely got up to leave. And in the evening I wrote, Doctor. Indifference. May 6th. I increasingly feel that my life boils down to this diary. There are children who don't call. There are neighbors who laugh at my slowness. There is a saleswoman who said, Maybe you'd better stay home, Grandpa. There is a bus where no one gave up their seat. There is even a person from church who turned away when I wanted to talk. They are all there, in the cells of my notebook. Small strokes of indifference that add up to a big picture of betrayal. Sometimes I reread these notes. They hurt, but at the same time, they give me strange strength. Because when I see everything together, I understand. It's not about one case, not about one person. It's a system. It's a world that decided that I was no longer needed. And then something old, dark, wakes up in me. Something that helped me survive when others fell. I look at my children and see that they no longer remember who I am. I look at my grandchildren and see that they don't even want to know. But I remember them all. I remember how I held their hand, how I saved them from trouble, how I gave my last. And I write down, Betrayal of Memory, May 15th. Each of my entries is a small stone, and I build a wall from these stones. It grows, and behind it something else grows. A cold, quiet determination. I no longer try to justify them. I do not look for explanations. Because the truth is simple. They turned their backs on me, and now I turn my backs on them. That day I decided to go to the store alone. Usually, I ordered the bare necessities through a neighbor who agreed for a small fee. But then I wanted to feel that I was still capable of something more than sitting in a chair and waiting for mercy. I had a list: bread, milk, some vegetables, nothing complicated. I put on my old raincoat, pulled on my cap, and went out. The air was fresh, autumnal, smelled of wet leaves. For a moment it seemed to me that life could still bring pleasure. I walked slowly but surely. People hurried past me. No one greeted me. No one paid attention. I was used to this. In the store, I chose tomatoes for a long time. Not because I understood, but because I tried to do everything correctly without rushing. The cashier looked at me as if I was stealing her time. I silently handed over the money, received the packages, and left. The way back was harder. The packages seemed heavier than they should have been. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating faster. When I stopped to rest, one package slipped from my fingers and fell. The tomatoes rolled through the dirt. I bent down to pick it up, but my back shot out. I froze on my knees in the middle of the street, the packages falling apart. People were walking by. Some stepped aside, some looked around in irritation. I raised my head and said quietly, "Help me. Please." Silence. No one stopped. I repeated it louder, almost shouting. Then a group of young men smoking nearby burst out laughing. "Look, the old man can't handle it," one shouted. "Let him fall," another said. "He's old. He doesn't have long to live." The laughter hit me harder than any blow. I felt something inside me crack. My vision blurred, as if the world had been drowned in a gray veil. I could no longer see their faces, only their twisted mouths spitting contempt. My fingers convulsively squeezed the plastic of the bag, and I realized something had awakened. I got up on my own, slowly, painfully, but I got up. The tomatoes remained on the ground. Let them be trampled. I walked on, not looking back. Every step echoed in my head like the beat of a drum. At home I sat down in a chair. Silence greeted me, as always. But now it was different. It was no longer empty. It was filled with my anger. I sat in the semi-darkness and listened to it whisper. And in that whisper I recognized myself, not the old forgotten bat, but the one who had once built, led, conquered. Only now it was different, colder, more ruthless. I opened my notebook. I reread all the entries, names, dates, small and large betrayals. The pages glowed like a map drawn by fate itself. And then I realized, these are not just notes. They are a plan. They are a list of those who did to me what the world did. Each line is proof. Each line is a future move in the game. I sat for a long time, placing my hand on the cover of the notebook. And for the first time in many years, I smiled. Not warmly, not in the old way. It was the smile of a predator who has tasted blood again. That night, I did not sleep. I looked into the darkness and saw faces. They appeared one after another. Son, daughter, grandson, doctor, cashier, those young men on the street, all those who laughed, those who ignored, those who turned away. They didn't know that their faces were already etched in my memory forever. They didn't know that the game had already begun. Now I was no longer the victim. I was the hunter. The next morning I woke up different. There was no longer that oppressive feeling that I was a shadow in my own house. On the contrary, I felt a cold clarity. My mind worked clearly, like a well-tuned mechanism. I didn't think about fatigue, about the pain in my joints. All that disappeared. Only the plan remained. I found an old notebook with telephone numbers that no one had opened for a long time. The pages were yellowed, the ink was smeared in some places, but the numbers were still legible. The names of old acquaintances, partners, even enemies. Many of them must have already been buried. But some were still breathing, and I knew their experience, their methods, had not yet been erased. I began to call. The voices on the other end of the wire sounded surprised. "Bat? Are you still alive?" I heard in them distrust, even anxiety, but at the same time, respect, because my name still meant something to those who remembered how I kept my word, how I conducted business. I spoke calmly, without haste. I asked not for favors, but for contacts, for information. People who had long since left business still had strings, and I collected these strings, tying them into a net. I didn't need weapons. I didn't need fists. I knew something else. The most powerful weapon is information. And the most painful blow is not physical pain, but the collapse of life, when a person sees everything he had falling through his fingers. I knew how to do it. Once I stopped competitors without touching them with a finger. A few calls, one accidental publication in the newspaper, one spoiled contract were enough. Now the same methods will become my weapon against those who betrayed me. I started with the little things. My grandson received a gift from me, an old laptop that I supposedly kept for him. In fact, it contained information that I had accidentally left open. Browsing history, correspondence, documents, a few hints, and his parents saw that he was not as pure as he seemed. The quarrel broke out by itself. I only planted a spark. My daughter, who loved to show off her perfect marriage, received an anonymous letter with photos of her husband in the company of another woman. Where did I get them from? Old connections. Information always has the property of accumulating. You just need to know where to dig. She cried, made a scandal, and their entire window of happiness cracked like thin glass. My son, who considered himself a successful businessman, woke up one morning and found out that his partner had refused the contract. The reason was loss of trust. How did this happen? An old acquaintance in the right office received an anonymous call. I didn't even give my name. I just gave her a few facts that she couldn't ignore. The contract was burned. My son was running around, screaming, swearing, but I knew. This was just the beginning. And the doctor who brushed me off? He received a complaint to the administration, signed by several patients. Did they really exist? It doesn't matter. Everything looked convincing in the papers. He ran through the corridors, making excuses. I was sitting in a chair and drinking tea. I worked quietly, methodically. No one suspected that I was behind it all. In their eyes, it looked like a coincidence, like bad luck, like fate. But I knew the truth. It was my game, and I played better than anyone else. The silence at home no longer oppressed me. It was my ally. I sat in the dark, listening to their world crack, and felt peace. Not joy, no. Revenge doesn't bring joy. It brings balance. When you've been spit on for a long time, there comes a moment when you repay the debt. And then it becomes quiet inside. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I just took it step by step. The names in my notebook were gradually crossed out. But not because I forgot. Number. Because everyone got their share. And everyone who had once laughed or despised now learned a different side of life. They thought I was old, weak, powerless. They were wrong. Because true strength is not in muscles or money. It's in memory. And I remember everything. The house became noisy. Not from laughter, not from joy, from quarrels, from screams, from reproaches. I sat in my chair, listening to the children accusing each other, the grandchildren arguing, as the family that seemed so strong fell apart before my eyes. I did not interfere. I was a shadow silently watching. But now, this shadow had power. They felt me, even when they were not looking. The daughter cried at night. Her husband swore that it was all slander, but she no longer believed it. Their house no longer shone with false happiness. The son sat sullenly. His business was bursting at the seams. He looked for the guilty, called his partners, shouted into the phone, but nothing changed. My grandson no longer looked me in the eye. He knew I could see his secrets. He did not laugh at me. On the contrary, fear appeared in his eyes. Even society, which had so easily turned away, began to see me differently. In the store, the cashier no longer sighed when I counted coins. She smiled tightly, politely. In the hospital, the doctor, the same one who had waved me away, now looked intently, asked questions, prescribed tests. He was afraid of complaints. He was afraid of me. And those young men on the street? When I passed them again, they fell silent, put down their cigarettes. Their eyes avoided my gaze. They sensed that something had changed in me. No one applauded me. No one thanked me. And I didn't expect it. I didn't need words. I saw something different. No one dared to look down on me anymore. They learned to respect me, even if it was out of fear, out of pain. It wasn't the respect I dreamed of receiving from children, but It was real respect, born of the realization that I had to be reckoned with. I wasn't completely ruining their lives. I didn't want to make them cripples, beggars. Number. My task was different. To show them a mirror. To make them feel what I felt. Indifference, betrayal, powerlessness. And they did. I saw in their eyes the same coldness that they had once directed at me. Now it had returned to them. Did I feel better? In a sense, yes, because now I knew I hadn't disappeared. I existed. I had an impact. I couldn't be erased from life. They might forget my stories, but they would never forget my lesson, because they had learned this lesson the hard way. At night, I opened my diary. I reread all the entries. Many names had been crossed out, not because I had forgiven them, but because they had already gotten theirs. I looked at these pages for a long time and thought, what next? Should I continue the game? Should I leave everything as it is? I realized I wouldn't stop as long as I had the strength to remember, because memory is my weapon and my legacy. I picked up a pen and wrote the last line, not for others, but for myself, as a conclusion, as a seal. Old age is not the end. It is a trial, and I am the judge. I closed the diary and felt peace. For the first time in many years, real.
Subscribe and like. And tell your friends about this video.